What's good, my friends? This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark, Ron, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 7 p.m. today. Truly do appreciate you making us part of your day. Could not do it without you. We thank you so very much for that. Here's how you can take part in what we've got cooking. Can give us a ring at 844-FAN-PHONE. That's 844-326-3663. The carpro.com text line is there for you at 71307. Just start your text with the word fan, and away you go on the show. Additionally, you can check out our YouTube feed as well. The Fan Upstate on YouTube. We are live on video until 5:20 each day, with the full live show going on until 7 p.m. Coming up on the show today. All right, coming up on the show today. Look, folks, if you are doing this one thing, I consider you anti and un-American. We've got our ACC and SEC team preview series continuing. We've got Alex Dono joining us on the Miami Hurricanes. We have got Eli Drinkwitz actually stepping up for the student athletes in college football today. The first coaches poll has been released. Our take on what we see there. We've got Chris Phillips joining us at 4:40 p.m. We've got the top 5 at 5. We've got onsides and offsides, and had a chance on Saturday to speak to the chief college football insider, Brett McMurphy. We will share that interview with you today. Coming up at 5:20, Brett McMurphy joined us on CBS Sports Radio on Saturday. Again, wonderful to have you guys with us. Had a spirited Friday discussion. It's so fun to go into a weekend with the kind of momentum that we had on Friday's show. We asked you guys, in honor of Diesel and I wanting to see promotion and relegation in college football, right? If you could relegate or kick out an upstate town, which upstate town would you get rid of? And that, along with a lively College Football Friday show, led us to the second most text we've ever had in a show. And that happened on Friday. Our two highest text days, folks, have both happened in the last month. That is a sign of growth, and we're thrilled to be experiencing that growth with you. So let's open with this. Look, folks, I have a feeling this is going to open our show for many days of the next few months and many days of the next few years. The changing face right now of college football. And the latest rumor is that there are flirtations going on with the ACC and Stanford. The Pac-12 is cooked. The Pac-12 is done. Diesel's going to tell you a lot more about that today, coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. And there's some really troubling signs financially there for the schools that remain. However, what everyone assumes is going to happen now, right, is that the ACC is about to be picked off Pac-12 style. And the only thing keeping that conference together at this particular time is the grant of rights. Now, I will point anybody to the fact that a few short years ago, the Big Ten was in trouble. We knew that the SEC was always going to be fine. The SEC was always going to be safe. But a few short years ago, like, the Big Ten was like 4th or 5th place in terms of bowl record, 4th or 5th place in terms of reputation, top 25 teams, etc. And then what did they do? Ohio State hired Urban Meyer, who then hired his replacement, Ryan Day. They're both fantastic. Penn State hired James Franklin. I don't think he's as good as some of you do, but he's good. I don't think he's great, but he's good. Michigan hired Jim Harbaugh, Michigan alum. All they've done is gone to back-to-back college football playoffs. And then suddenly you start to look at what conference has the best quarterbacks. Well, it might be the Big Ten. What conference has the best coaches? It might be the Big Ten. The Big Ten got to a place where a coach of Brett Bielema's caliber was able to agree to coach at a place like Illinois, right? Now, I was listening to the Jim Rome show, DA Damon Amendolara filling in for Jim today, hosting Brett Bielema. And Brett Bielema said something that I don't identify with. This is odd, folks. Weird story for you. Diesel told me before the show that he has a friend that played for Brett Bielema. And I told Diesel that I ran into Brett Bielema at a hotel in Napa Valley, California. All right. Had a vacation out there. This was, circa 2015, right? So 8 years ago. 8 years ago, had a vacation out there to Napa Valley, walked into the hotel. Brett Bielema was walking out as I'm walking in. Then our entire stay there, Brett Bielema was in the hotel bar every single night. I'm like, man, this dude gets it in. Gets it in completely. But he said something I can't identify with. He was asked, how do you feel about this expansion in the Big Ten? And he says, quote, anytime your conference can go coast to coast, there's not many conferences that can say that. Well, it's at last check, that's not, Brett, what college football is.
That's also saying something without really saying anything. Is that a good thing, Brett? Is that a bad thing, Brett? I think you got to be more specific on that. That is a non-answer.
Yeah, let's ask the student athletes who chose their college based on their family getting to see them play, right? How they feel about going from Oregon to Rutgers, how they feel about going from USC to Illinois, USC to Minnesota. These kids, many of them chose their college because their family would get to see them play in more games due to close by schools, travel, etc. Right? Folks, I like consistency, and college football is giving me a paint by numbers. I like geography, and college football is playing pin the tail on the donkey blind.
Which is why I think the SEC going divisionless is a terrible idea. I mean, look, we all know what going divisionless is about. It's about how can we get the new brands, Texas and Oklahoma, and there's a few schools who don't play Texas A&M very often. How can we get the two Texas schools in Oklahoma spread out to the other cities and the other stadiums in our conference quicker? That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to move those brands and have them playing games in those stadiums more often. But I'm going to tell you, if I was an SEC fan and I was an SEC East fan, I'd be pissed. I'd be pissed about this. Like, I don't give a rat's ass about playing Mississippi State more often. I don't care about playing Arkansas more often, especially if that means I play Florida or I play Kentucky or I play Tennessee less often. They are selling you a bill of goods, and man, it blows me away every time this conversation comes up. How college football fans of elite big-time programs have just lapped this BS up and bought it hook, line, and sinker. Yeah, I want to play the teams that I care about less so that I can play the teams I care less about more. What the hell kind of sense does that make? But you guys are loving this, and I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah,
it sucks.
I'm with Diesel there. All right. So I got 3 points here. I like consistency. College football is giving me a paint by numbers. I like geography. College football is playing pin the tail on the donkey blind. And I like tradition. And college football is taking a blank canvas to the sport after 100 years. Our opening question to you guys today is this: what change would get you to walk away from college football? Is there one? Now, I thought about this. You're going to hear Brett McMurphy address this on the show today in the 520 segment. And this was written down on my rundown for Saturday's CBS show. Even before Brett McMurphy said what he did. And I'm not going to let that cat out of the bag right now. You'll hear it yourself at 5:20 p.m. But I will tell you this. To me, my answer to that question is if college football gets to the point where it feels like the NFL. You know, we just heard Brett Bielema say on this station as part of the Jim Rome show, well, the Big Ten now goes coast to coast, and I'm not sure how many conferences can say that. And that's a good thing. Like the travel, the wear and tear, like not honing in on your region of the country, right? That's a good thing. Colin Cowherd, in my opinion, the best sports talk show host in America, wins that just about every single year, wins that title. Last year was the first year that I think he didn't. Pat McAfee won it last year. Colin Cowherd was second. Says he's for it because the college football's problem is it doesn't have enough good games. He says, look at the Labor Day weekend slate of games. He was excited about 2, LSU and Florida State and Colorado and TCU. And those were the only games he was into. But the reality is, folks, there's always in each time slot a good college football game. There's a good college football game at noon, 3:30, and 7. And then if you want to recover from your tailgating, you could watch the Pac-12 after dark very, very late at night, right? College football gave you that. Then I would tune into what was on network television on Sunday, and it's like every single week, the Jets and the Patriots. And I'm like, bro, I just watched LSU and A&M go to 7 overtimes, and you're giving me the 6-4 Dolphins against the 4-6 Jets. And I'm supposed to be excited about this? I'm supposed to be excited about the NFL that is entirely about money versus college football, which at least back then in 2016, 2017, was only partly about money, right? The reason fans care so much about college football is because it isn't about money to them, right? I mean, that's the very essence of it. When you're going to a college football game, you're not thinking about money. You're thinking about the blood, sweat, and tears and the pride and the passion and the fact that the student athletes were kind of struggling the same way you were, struggling to manage their time, struggling to manage their finances. It was a bonding experience for all of you.
Hell, Bryce Young did DoorDash as a freshman.
Yes. So, if college football gets to me, ladies and gentlemen, if college football gets to the point to me where it feels like the NFL, then that's the change that could get me to walk away. And I'm going to channel my inner Dabo Sweeney here. If it's going to be pro football, I might as well watch pro football. To Colin Cowherd's point, well, it gives us better matchups. Look, we can get Oregon, Ohio State in the non-conference schedule, but when you get to your conference schedule, college football becomes regionalized, and that's a beautiful thing. That is a beautiful thing. All right?
But now it's the opposite. Now you're going to have to schedule your regional teams non-conference.
Isn't that weird?
And all these games that you're used to showing up towards the end of the season, rivalry week, those are now going to be week 2 or week 3 games.
I think the NFL, Diesel, has been proactive. The extra point is boring. The kickers make it 99.7% of the time. So we're going to change that. We're going to move it back. Now you can't run to the restroom when they kick the extra point because they could miss. Proactive is what you want to be, right? Constantly tweaking and changing, not leaving well enough alone. Major League Baseball has been reactive, which is better than non-active. They reacted late, but the changes they've made, shortening the games, etc., and that take 30 minutes off the game, the pitch clock, you can only throw over to first base so many times. They've been largely viewed positively. College football's behavior is destructive. Let's cannibalize ourselves, all in the name of greed, right? My mom was asking me last night on the phone if I could explain what's going on to her in layman's terms. And here's what I told her. I said, Mom, you remember my ex-fiance? And I lost the job in Tampa with Booger McFarland, and Booger and I got fired on the same day, and everyone got fired because there was a corporate merger. And then the new company said, we're not going to continue sports radio. So we got caught in a format flip, right? And then 2 months after that, my fiance said she's not really feeling attracted to me anymore. And it was one of the hardest periods in my life. In 8 months, I lost my dream job. I lost the girl that I thought at the time was going to be long-term. I lost a home. I lost my puppy. I lost all that stuff In the end, it was a blessing because I didn't need to be with her anyway, and it led me to my gorgeous wife that I have right now, right? But she left because what I realized, she was into the title that I had. She was into the parties and the VIP and the status and the meeting NFL players and all this other stuff, but she really wasn't into me. See what I'm saying? Like, she was about the glitz and she was about the glamour. The Pac-12 schools are leaving for the glitz and the glamour. You mean to tell me you can't operate on $20 million a year that Apple is going to give you? What were you operating on back in the 80s? What were you operating on back in the 90s? Apple was about to give you $20 million a year. Suddenly, it wasn't sexy anymore, right? USC, UCLA leave. It's not sexy. You did the same thing that my fiance did, my ex-fiance. And when I told my mom that, she said, I'm so glad you used that analogy. Now I understand it perfectly. So we ask you guys, what is the change? What would get you to walk away from college football? Could you ever imagine doing that? And folks, it's a tough question to ask. You know, it's a tough question to ask. You know, I love Josh Pate. I would love to see Josh Pate, who hates these changes, really get angry and tough about this. I'd love to see that.
I've listened to his show, watched his podcast a lot over the past 4 or 5 days. And with Josh, you always get a, well, yeah, no, things are happening that we don't like. But once toe meets leather, you know, it's all going to be fine. No, Josh, it's not going to be fine. It's not going to be fine. And no amount of brushing it under the rug and saying, guys, just chill out. Once we have games, it's all going to be fine. No amount of that is going to change my mind. Like, if I'm a Clemson fan and my team is pulled into the Big Ten, I'm furious. I'm furious. You know why? Because I, as a fan, will never, ever, ever see any of that money that the Big Ten is handing out. I will never see it. If it builds something on campus, guess what? It's probably going to be a building that I'm not allowed to go in. It's probably going to be some attachment, some addendum on campus, some building down the road that I, as a fan, am never allowed to go in. So I get absolutely nothing out of my team being pulled into a different conference, playing teams in Rutgers, Oregon, Southern Cal, Champaign, Illinois. I get absolutely nothing that benefits me, and I get screwed by not being able to travel to Georgia Tech, by not being able to travel to Chapel Hill, to Durham, to Raleigh. I get screwed as a fan. And there's so many fans on the internet just dancing a jig saying, this is great, guys. Don't you love where this is going? No. Because those fans only ever watch on TV, so to them, nothing changes.
So, yeah, like I would like to hear Josh get a little bit angry, get a little bit upset right now. But the reality is, if college football is being ruined, right, then what am I doing here? I'm in a college football market. Josh's bread and butter is college football. You know, his living is entirely on college football. Our living here is probably 70% on college football. It may be not smart business for me to say and admit on the air, I think they're ruining the sports. But folks, I think they're ruining the sports. You know, like, hey, man, don't you want more good games? No, I don't want it to feel like the NFL. You know, college football feels special because, A, every week matters, every game matters. Akron can knock Ohio State out of the playoffs. Think about that. Akron can do that. You're going to change that by expanding the playoff too far. Every region of the country has their brand, their style of football. That makes it unique, that makes it special. So no, Brett Bielema, I don't value that your conference goes coast to coast. No, Colin Cowherd, I don't value that we now get Oregon against Wisconsin on a daily basis. That's what the non-conference games are for. That's what the bowl games are for. This just hastens the death of bowl season, is what it does, if I'm honest with you. 71307 on the text line is where you guys can get to us. Let's get to your answers on that specific question. Diesel, could you see yourself ever walking away from college football? Like, could anything happen to the point where that's it, you're done? For me, Diesel, I feel like that I get to that point if it becomes too much like the NFL. And then maybe, Diesel, I don't ever leave for good. But maybe instead of like, okay, sweetheart, to my wife, from noon until midnight, I'm gonna be making a dent in the couch.
Yeah.
Maybe then it becomes, babe, I'd like to watch one game on Saturday. The rest of the time I can do things with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to watch the noon kickoff. Everything else, past 3:00, I'm yours. And that's where I've been for a long time with the NFL. I've said, Ashley, Saturday's for me. Sunday is for you. Saturday, I'm going to sit on the couch and binge football all day. Doesn't matter who's playing. I will watch Maction on a Tuesday night. Sunday, whatever you want to do, sweetheart, let's go. Whatever you want to do. And the thing is, the NFL never had me. The NFL never had me. College football's got me. And college football, with the changes, if I were a fan of a school, if I was an Oregon alum, and all of a sudden I couldn't play all my Pac-12 brethren anymore, I might say, you know what? I'll skip the Rutgers game. I don't need to watch that. And guess what? Then the Rutgers game feeds into the Illinois game. That feeds into the Indiana game. That feeds into the Iowa game, feeds into the Minnesota game. And all of a sudden, there's 4 or 5 games on the schedule every year that I can miss.
And that's where we're at, folks. So I would like answers to that question if we can. Texter says college football is ruined. Started when networks started setting kickoff times. But Texter, what change would get you to walk away from college football? Would have a really hard time walking away from college football for any reason, a texter says. I pretty much have Carolina football in my blood. Not even Muschamp and his sorry self could make me walk away from them. So says Jacob in Spartanburg. So Jacob says there's nothing. Texter says most D1 schools have an average of 22 sports. What is this saying? Most D1 schools have an average of 22 sports, and they rely on these sports for their Title IX athletic requirements. Non-football sports also often have a very strong GPAs that ADs need. Sorry, not football. Football is bread and butter, but there will be repercussions, i.e. traveling for student athletes of volleyball, swim, and soccer, etc. Sincerely, mom of a D1 athlete. Yeah, ma'am, I really appreciate you sharing that. Like, I really appreciate that. And you know what the number one factor is that leads to depression? It is lack of rest. It is lack of mental health, lack of well-being. The number one factor. Now you're asking kids who you previously called student athletes, we've got to make it easy for the students. Well, now that we have NIL, the hell with the students, there is no more student athlete. Okay, when's the last time you heard a college football power broker use the phrase student athlete? Oh, they're getting paid. They're not student athletes anymore. Coming up next on the show, if you are behaving in this particular way, you really need to check yourself because you are guilty of incredibly small-minded thinking. That's next. This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate.
Kool-Aid drinkers. Alex Rose says, I see new rivalries. Bowl season has sucked for years. Now it will be playoff season. Alex, explain to me why bowl season has sucked. I've heard it seems like it's been a talking point over the last 7, 8, 10 years or so that bowl season has lost its luster. According to who? According to who? Are you still watching bowl games? Like, tell me why bowl season sucks. Like, give me a real reason that you thought up, not that you heard somebody on a podcast explaining why it sucks. Because I've never heard a specific reason from anyone as to why bowl season sucks. I think bowl season could surely be a heck of a lot better if they got rid of the automatic tie-ins and these bowl games could go back to inviting whoever they think will sell the most tickets and be the best matchups. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I really dislike the automatic tie-ins to bowls because it starts to get a little stagnant. It starts to get a little repetitive. Your team ends up going back to the same 2 or 3 places every year unless they're going to the playoff. So please explain to me why bowl season sucks. By the way, Mark, welcome to P Digits, a brand new person in the YouTube chat. Welcome, P Digits.
Very, very cool. All right. So yesterday, in case you missed it, the U.S. lost in the World Cup to Sweden as we shift gears here. Here's what it sounded like at the very end. The U.S. outshot Sweden 21-7. All right. Shots on goal. The U.S. outshot Sweden 11-1. And the U.S. had its best player, Sophia Smith, lined up to send the U.S. to the quarterfinal with a penalty kick, and she skied it over the bar. Here's what it sounded like as it ended yesterday.
Hartig off there. Did it go in? Waiting on a signal. No. You've got to be kidding. But they're waiting. They're going to check. VAR can intervene. I couldn't tell from here. I thought it was going in, but it happened so quickly. Wow. Sweden wins.
You know, listen to how happy the rest of the world is that we lost. Okay? Like, there's not a lot of Swedish fans in Australia or New Zealand, right? There's not a lot of American fans in Australia and New Zealand. The rest of the world was celebrating. And darn if we weren't hearing some of those similar celebrations here in the United States of America. You might imagine that Team USA was very emotional after the defeat, which was their worst performance in World Cup history by a massive margin. Their worst ever finish in the World Cup was 3rd place. They now got eliminated in the round that has 16 teams remaining. Okay? 3rd place. So worst they ever did was lose in the semifinal. Okay? And get 3rd place because they won the 3rd place game. Worst they ever did. Consider where this ranks, right? Consider what this is. Team USA emotional after defeat.
Yet are eliminated. You can feel for these players. Sophia Smith in tears. It meant a lot to these players, and they will make an exit knowing that, Rob, they gave it their all tonight, but their all, in the end, was not good enough to advance. Congrats to Sweden.
So anyway, folks, why did the Americans lose in this World Cup? They lost because we, and I allow myself to say we about our country, right? I don't like to say we about Florida. I like to say we about our country. We played 4 games and won 1. Okay? You play 4 games, you win 1, you're not going to win the World Cup. We lost because in 3 games against Europe, we scored 1 goal. So we got what we deserved, but that is entirely because of play and not at all because of politics. Okay? We didn't cut the mustard in terms of our level of play. Alexi Lawless on the Fox Sports coverage said the following, tweeted the following: "Don't kill the messenger. This U.S. women's national team is polarizing. Politics, causes, stances, and behavior have made this team unlikable to a portion of America. This team has built its brand and has delivered its power from being the best and winning. If that goes away, they risk becoming irrelevant." That goes away, they risk becoming irrelevant. So, folks, here is my feeling on this. All right. I believe that the very people who do not like the U.S. women's national team are allowing their politics to dictate their patriotism. That's not something you should ever do. To root against the Americans in the Olympics, in any sport where we have a national team, to root against Americans is by its very nature un-American. And at best, you are guilty of the same thing you're accusing them of, being un-American. Folks, if you're only going to root for a team or athletes that share your political beliefs, you, my friend, are going to wind up in a very, very, very lonely place. And what really got to me yesterday was that in pockets of the country, some voices of the country seem to be downright celebrating that America lost. This idiot Benny Johnson on Twitter, I don't know who he is, but he's got a huge following. He says, "Breaking: woke U.S. women's soccer humiliation. After winning back-to-back World Cups, the heavily favored Team USA has been eliminated by Sweden in the 16th round." Well, shows his lack of soccer knowledge there. It's called the round of 16. Team USA's downfall was delivered by anti-America, anti-woman activist Megan Rapinoe's embarrassing free kick here. What did I say to that? Never allow politics to dictate your patriotism. Don't be this guy. Don't be that guy. And that tweet has now been seen 22,000 times. Diesel, to me, it is, if you want to root against the American team because you don't like stances of one or two players on that team, you're guilty of being un-American, which is the same thing you're accusing them of. Did you ever grow up with your mom saying two wrongs don't make a right? And the other thing I would add is it is the picture of small-minded, myopic thinking to have that kind of viewpoint, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, we've definitely shifted in this country to we used to allow people to have differing political beliefs, and we would get over it when it came time for us to go win something as a country. To now, it's screw you, my way or the highway. If you don't think the way that I think, you should get the hell out. We've changed. We've changed as an American culture. Our culture has changed for the worse. In the past, let's call it 6 years, if anybody picks up what I'm trying to say, past 6 years, 7 years, we've changed the way we view people who have differing opinions. Used to be, you tolerated it, you moved on. Now it's, I don't tolerate you, get the hell out. And we've got Stephen Webb on the YouTube thread saying Megan Rapinoe had no business playing. She wasn't even getting minutes with her club team. It's possible that she wasn't talented enough anymore to be on the field. She's aging. Maybe she lost a step, but they felt like they had to play her to prove a point.
Yeah, Diesel, no, she didn't belong playing. She was 38 years old, and the manager kept putting her in the game, and she was awful every single time she was in the game. This isn't my opinion. She's brought in to specialize in free kicks. She missed her penalty kick. Her free kicks were awful. She wasn't sharp. She was off of her form, and she shouldn't have been playing. You know, you don't go by reputation, as Taylor Twellman said. You go by repetition. She hasn't had repetition. So we shouldn't have gone by reputation. Now, I'll tell you this. All right, I'll tell you this. I got a direct message on Facebook from a P1 listener, and he said, I won't say his name, but he said, I saw the picture of the women kneeling during the anthem. Go home, girls. I know you said don't let politics affect patriotism, Mark, but I can't stand to see that nonsense on the world stage. Girls got what they were owed. Sir, and to everyone, the girls did not kneel during the national anthem at the World Cup. That did not happen. But check out what is angering a pocket of uber conservative America. And this pocket, Diesel, seems to want to be mad at everything these days. It is, look, guys, I'm a registered independent. I have voted left and I have voted right. All right. I think the far left extremist liberals are nut jobs, right? And I think the group of conservatives that are mad at everything are not very smart. Okay? That's what they're guilty of. They're trying to be mad at everything. You know what they're mad at right now, Diesel? That some of the women didn't sing the national anthem. They all stood. But, on Fox News I was reading today, it said only 6 out of the 11 starting women sung the national anthem. So it's like Fox is sitting there like a bunch of tools, like analyzing the behavior of women during the national anthem to do nothing except try to incite a very unintelligent portion of their base anyway. Right? I mean, that's what they're doing.
And it works.
It
works every time.
Yeah, it does. And it's moronic and it's idiotic. Nobody kneeled for the national anthem on our team. Okay? So, for the record, I'm against kneeling for the anthem. I know that it's a sign of, it's highlighting, and it's initially for police brutality. It's for the injustices that occur in this country, which are real and they do exist, right? But it's not something I would choose to do because a lot of folks view it as disrespectful, okay? I would not kneel for the national anthem. I would view that as disrespect to those who fought for our country. At the same time, I can say that and also say to you that Colin Kaepernick should have been in the NFL the last 10 years, right? You turned your back on your NFL teams who did this for about a season, and then you came back. But you're not doing that with the women's national team. And Diesel, I can't help but feel like a small part of this to the bottom 10% of conservatives that want to be angry at everything. I can't help but think that part of this is that it's women doing this. Part of this is that they still don't believe that women should be able to have this voice. When your NFL team does it, you punish your NFL team for a year. NFL ratings dip by 12%. Then you come right back. The NFL ratings have never been better. But the women do that. Oh, no. You're a woman. You're not going to get away with doing that. Shut up and get in the kitchen. There's a pocket of America that I believe doesn't feel like women should have that voice. And again, folks, I'll go back to my overarching point. If you're going to wait to root for a team that shares your political beliefs, you're going to be waiting perhaps the entirety of your life. To root against the Americans is un-American and makes you un-American. Okay? Nobody kneeled for the national anthem. Get your head out of your backside.
Yeah, we got a problem, Mark, in that the extreme left really controls the type of content that the far left cable networks. Ask anybody what that is. They'll probably say it's CNN or MSNBC or whatever. And these networks, they're in the ratings business. They want to give you the content that you want, that incites you, that gets you to click more, that gets you to listen more, that gets you to visit their website and their social medias more. And the far right is exactly the same. The far right has this loud voice that gets blasted out on the internet like a megaphone, and it gets retweeted the most. So what does Fox News do? Fox News buys into it and they amplify it and they talk about those things more. And then it affects the way they view their stories, and they shape their stories and shape the talking points to incite more people. The problem is, Mark, it's the fringe nut jobs on either side of it that essentially have control of the media, because there's nobody in these newsrooms, there's nobody running these networks who will say, we're going to completely ignore these whack jobs. Let them go out there and scream into the ether. We're not paying attention to that. We're talking about the real news, the stuff that's a little more towards the middle.
Some of these folks do not want these women to have their freedom of speech. If you do this, I'm not going to like you. We have a text that says, Mark, this women's teams have done a lot of anti-American BS. There's no taking up for them, period. Yeah, what have they done that's anti-American? They drape themselves in flags when they win. Colin Kaepernick told you that it wasn't about disrespecting the country. He told you it was about police brutality. I don't like kneeling for the national anthem, okay? But I'm not going to allow politics to dictate my patriotism. And if you are, you're small-minded.
There's not enough ink on this planet, Mark, to print out the list of rules that all these athletes should follow to make sure they don't run afoul of anyone.
Oh, exactly.
Like, imagine if they polled Fox News viewers and asked, "Hey, write in a rule that you think this women's national team should follow to be great patriots and out on the field." I mean, it would be a never-ending list of rules.
You got to stand straight, Diesel. You got to have your hand on your heart. You got to sing all the words. Hey, man, I stand for the anthem. I have my hand on my heart. I never sing the words. Does that mean you don't root for me? Because my mouth isn't moving during the national anthem? Give me a break. Who are you to police others' freedom of expression, how they want to experience their life? And if you want to hate Megan Rapinoe because she said a couple controversial things that burn your brownies, you want to hate her because she's gay and she supports what is it, Diesel? LBGTQ? Is that right?
It's LGBTQI plus.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. If you
I don't even know what the I stands for.
If you want to hate Megan Rapinoe because of that, that's your right. But a lot of the women on our team have nothing to do with any of that, and you're painting them all with the same brush. Cut it out. Don't be a dumb bottom 10%er. All right? Now, I'm Mark Ryan, and I approve that message. Offsides is back after this. U.S. women's national team. Let's see what you guys are saying here. USA thought they would trot out our 34 and 38-year-old past their prime players and waltz through the World Cup. We used to have a huge advantage in women's sports due to college and youth development. The rest of the world is catching up. That simple. Yeah, I think that has happened. And
yeah, but this is soccer. The entire world is supposed to be far beyond us.
Right, and they haven't been. We've invested resources that they haven't on the women's side. And then we got caught in between this time. You know, Megan Rapinoe should have not been playing, and she was. Alex Morgan was really not productive. We had a few older players and a bunch of younger players. We got caught in between cycles. It happens. Rapinoe had no business playing, a texter says, not because of her politics, knowing the fact she wasn't playing for her club team. Yes. I'm on the exact opposite side of most of the political views of the women on the U.S. team, but I still want them to win. I don't necessarily think that they deserve to win based on the nonchalantness and entitled attitude that they seem to approach the tournament with, but I still wanted them to win. Jacob, you just echoed my sentiments exactly. Let's see here. Mark, I think the women's soccer team was too much thinking they deserve everything. Maybe. Megan Rapinoe has done more to destroy her reputation than any other athlete. Texter, she's a millionaire. All right. Texter says, we live in a time where everyone wants to be offended by everything. You're not going to convince these clowns otherwise. So says Mongo. It's crazy. You've got, like, you guys call woke cancel culture the extremist liberals. But then the far right does the exact same BS. You're all nut jobs, okay? Like the far left 10% extremist liberals, nut jobs. The 10%, the bottom 10% of the conservatives who want to be mad at everything, nut jobs. You're crazy, and you're dumb, and you're small-minded. Stop doing that, all right? You're rooting against the women because they're un-American. Is that not the most un-American thing ever? Okay, like, think about your behavior, and you are casting off an entire team because of the behavior of one or two. Grow up. Grow up. Our ACC and SEC team preview series continues next here on Offsides. This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 7 o'clock p.m. Truly do appreciate you making us part of your day. Thanks to all those watching us on YouTube right now at the moment. So I will tell you this, folks. Oftentimes, when a coach loses a job, it's said he lost the job because he, quote, lost the locker room. Well, I got to be real with you guys. I don't think first-year coach Mario Cristobal in Miami had the locker room last year when they lost by 14 points at home to Middle Tennessee. Nor do I think he had the locker room when they lost by 24 points at home to Duke. Nor do I feel like he had the locker room when they quit in a 42-point loss to Florida State, lost by 30 to Clemson, lost by 26 to Pitt. So who really is in charge here, right? Mario Cristobal, year 2, didn't have the locker room. Can he get the locker room? To what degree is all this true? Joined right now by one of the nicest guys and super talented in the sports media business. I was talking to Diesel about this. You call Alex and he's like, sure, man, happy to help. Great, anytime. Truly do appreciate it, and we appreciate his kindness. He joins us right now on the show, host of the Locked On Canes daily podcast and an All Hurricanes contributor, a Miami Hurricanes expert from Miami, Florida. Alex Dono joins us right now on the show. Alex, always good to catch up with you, pal. Thanks so much. So it is obvious, right, that play, the word quit was used a lot last year for the Miami Hurricanes, and for that word to be used, Mario Cristobal didn't have the locker room. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Oh, it's a fair assessment. It's very layered and complicated because obviously, like any of these things, I think there's a lot more to it than that. But yeah, listen, when Cristobal took over, I think it became apparent from his perspective and from some of the players' perspective that, I don't necessarily, players thinking, hey, I don't necessarily fit what he does. His coaching style doesn't necessarily fit who I am and what I do. I don't think it's any secret why, you see a guy like Deion Sanders in Colorado turning over his roster the way he is. Maybe Cristobal should have done that a year sooner just to get, guys that kind of fit with his philosophies. And since last season, for better or for worse, I think for better in most cases, about half the players who were on the roster last year are no longer with the roster. Some of those, cycled out through graduation. Others, decided to leave. Some of them were shown the door and encouraged to leave. So I think the hope would be a locker room that wasn't really together last year, because obviously that's a fair assessment when you're losing to Middle Tennessee and you're getting blown out by your rival by 42 points. I think it's fair to say that the locker room wasn't united last year. I think Mario Cristobal, in making so many coaching changes and making so many roster changes, because, that was a roster he inherited for the most part last year, trying to get guys who want to be there and want to play for him. We'll see if that makes a difference.
The Paul Rudd, and I say that because everybody likes Paul Rudd, the Paul Rudd of podcasters, Alex Dono, Locked On Canes podcast. What systematic changes does not Miami need to get back to national relevance? Because it feels like Miami has thrown a lot of things against the wall, some things to varying degrees of success, some things, just plopped on the ground. What is Miami lacking that it had in the 80s and early 90s? What are they missing now?
Well, a lot of things that make football teams win games on Saturdays, things like elite speed. They didn't have that last year, which has been, a trademark of Miami teams. When they used to win games and championships, they always had the fastest team on the field. And then, when you talk about schematics, because obviously you can't necessarily teach speed and you can't necessarily teach size. They've been trying to get faster and bigger with players that they brought in. I thought schematically on both sides of the football, especially on offense, there were things that just really didn't fit with the modern era of college football. Offensively, and Miami has changed offensive coordinators since last year. It was a very predictable, very stale, very horizontal type of offense. I know that their goal in 2023 is to become a little bit more unpredictable, a little bit more vertical. They actually, which is something that even surprised me from Mario Cristobal when he made this hire, he brings in an offensive coordinator with an air raid background in Shannon Dawson. I never thought you would, use the words Mario Cristobal and air raid in that order in the same sentence before, but that's the world we're now living in. And so they want to be a little bit more progressive with the downfield passing game. You also have to have the personnel to do that. It's not only about having the scheme and the coordinator. They went out in the transfer portal and brought in Tyler Harrell, who played at both Louisville and Alabama. He runs a 4.24. He's a South Florida kid. So, he obviously knows the area and he knows some of his teammates now. He can help you stretch the field at wide receiver. They really revamped their offensive line, which honestly, that's going to be one of the keys to this team, because not only were they losing games, they were losing a lot of battles at the line of scrimmage last year. They go and bring in Javion Cohen, the left guard from Alabama. Matt Lee, the center who played at UCF, has been getting rave reviews so far. And they recruited a couple of five-star offensive tackles in the class of 2023. The guy who's going to get on the field right away is Francis Maui-Noa from IMG Academy. I think he's going to be a day one starter at right tackle. It can be a blessing and a curse. You've got a true freshman starting at an important position. You could say, hey, that's not a great sign for your depth. Or I think in the case of Francis, you say this guy is legitimate. He's beating people out for that position, and he looks like he's going to make a difference for the next 3 and 4 years. And so, obviously you need your quarterback to be upright if he's going to be completing 30, 40, 50-yard bombs downfield. And then on defense, I don't think it was as much of an issue schematically last year, but they did bring in a pretty progressive defensive coordinator, Lance Guidry, who was at Marshall last year. And Marshall obviously did a great job against Notre Dame. That was a defensive masterclass. They hope he can do a lot of that at Miami. And a big change, Mark and Diesel, that I've noticed in terms of the types of bodies Miami's trying to bring in. They, over the past few years, had kind of been undersized and under length at positions like linebacker and cornerback. They've brought in 3 or 4 new corners who are 6'2" plus that are very long. The linebackers that they brought in through the portal and true freshmen are all 6'2", 6'3", 230, 250 type of range. So, they're trying to become a better tackling team and a better coverage team. So they're addressing those areas where they were lacking last year.
Alex Dono, host of the Locked On Canes podcast out of Miami, Florida, joining us on the U today. Alex, we had a funny segment a few weeks ago about stealing traditions in college football. And I heard on CBS Sports Radio nationally from a Utah fan that said that we used to be the U at Utah. And he said, Miami stole the U from us. Give it back, you lazy thieves. That's what he said. Alex, do you feel like the U was stolen?
Honestly, I have no idea. You know who I should ask?
Yeah.
She hasn't been there in quite some time, but my sister for like 4 or 5 years actually was a professor at Utah.
Wow.
So she was a Ute for sure. She didn't, and she graduated from the University of Miami. So she's been on both sides of this equation, Mark, but I never heard anything from her while she was at Utah about Miami stealing the U from them. I could believe it. I feel like Utah has probably, been an established institution for longer than Miami has. Although Miami, I think, goes back to the 1920s, but they didn't really become, prominent until 70s, 80s, that sort of thing. So this is the first I'm hearing of it. So I can do some more digging on this. But you know what, Mark? Even if it is true, I'm pretty sure Miami's not giving that back. That would be a very lengthy, bitter court battle if Utah wants to take that back from Miami, because they're not giving that back.
Alex Dono, Locked On Canes podcast. Alex, talk to me about a guy that was there last year, Frank Ponce. He was quarterback's coach, passing game coordinator. His time didn't work out. Frank Ponce means a little bit to me because he coached at my alma mater as various different positions to a high degree of success. But when he moved up to Miami, things maybe didn't work out so well, and now he's back in Boone, North Carolina. What happened with the passing game last year that sent him on the road again?
I like Ponce a lot, and at the time when he was hired at Miami, I really thought this could be a great fit. I even thought, hey, this guy could be a future offensive coordinator here. He's got South Florida ties. I really think that Frank Ponce's time not working out in Miami, and listen, maybe if had he not decided to go back to Boone, I don't know if that was kind of him getting nudged out or if he decided to leave, but And I said this at the time when he left. I think it had a lot to do with how poorly he fit and worked together with Miami's offensive coordinator at the time. And it's funny because Miami's former OC, Josh Gaddis, who did not do well at Miami last year, he ended up leaving, or actually he got let go after Ponce had already resigned. So who knows, maybe if Gaddis had been fired sooner, things could have worked out differently with Ponce, because all season long last year, I just thought there was poor communication between the two. And I usually prefer it, and this is what Miami does now, when your quarterback's coach and your offensive coordinator are the same person, because I think those are two pretty important jobs not to have a disconnect between. I thought that the communication between the OC, who was the wide receivers coach, and Ponce, who was the quarterback's coach, they were never on the same page with what they wanted their quarterbacks to do, how they wanted their quarterbacks to prepare. I don't think they spent enough time together. I don't think their philosophies meshed enough. And I thought that poor communication, whoever's fault it was, probably not Ponce's, by the way, I think that lack of communication had a lot to do with things not working out at Miami. You can certainly say, hey, Miami's quarterbacks underperformed regardless of the scheme. I think that's fair. And I think if, anyone talked to Tyler Van Dyke about it right now, he would probably admit, I needed to do better. He also was injured last year. The offensive line couldn't protect anybody. So with Frank Ponce, I think it was a lot about the situation. It was kind of a nightmare scenario for him. And I'm sorry things worked out the way that they did, because, again, at the time he was hired, I thought this is a perfect fit, and I hope this guy can be here for a long time, but it didn't play out that way.
Alex Dono joining us as part of our ACC and SEC team preview series today, featuring the Miami Hurricanes. Alex, there are a few teams that fit this description, and I don't know if anyone knows what to expect. A&M, lofty expectations, very bad last year. Miami, lofty expectations, subpar performance last year. So forecasting what they're going to be this year isn't easy. The college football preview magazine I'm looking at, Athlon, says they're the 30th best team in America. They project them to improve from 5-7 to 8-4. Where do you have Miami? I mean, certainly we expect them to be better, but how do you go about penciling in exactly how much better?
Yeah, that's tough. I've got them in the 7 to 8 win range. I'll probably, by the time I make my prediction official, usually I make a huge to-do about that. I'll probably end up with 8 wins, just to give you the preview on that. But getting there is not going to be easy. Like, Miami's going to have significant improvement to get to the 8-win mark, because by ACC standards, they're not playing an SEC West schedule, of course, but by ACC standards, they've got one of the tougher schedules in the conference, because they have, Texas A&M, who you mentioned. That's an out-of-conference game for Miami. Who knows how either of those teams are going to look. But you have FSU on the road. They blew out Miami in a home game for Miami last year. That's not going to be an easy game. Miami has to play Clemson. It's at home, but Clemson has had Miami's number for the longest time. North Carolina on the road, they've had Miami's number. You've got NC State on the schedule. You've got Louisville, who I think could be sneaky good this year. They're on the schedule as well. So, by ACC standards, you could look at Miami's schedule and say, hey, there could potentially be 5-6 losses on there. So they're going to have to overperform in some games that they're going to be underdogs in, like some of those that I mentioned. They're definitely going to be underdogs against Florida State, A&M, Clemson. You're going to have to overperform in some of those games. And I think a big thing that fans are looking for from Miami, and yeah, fans would love to go 12-0, 15-0 every single year. But realistically, you look at Miami, and one of the big hopes would be, not only are you going to win a game or two you're not supposed to win, but you've got to cut down on some of these horrific letdown performances against teams you should beat, right? Because Miami had way too many of those, including Middle Tennessee last year, where, you should have blown this team out of your building and you end up suffering a crazy loss. Things like that seem to happen to Miami every now and then. You struggle in some of these conference games as well. So I think if you just look at, hopefully the coaching staff is in better communication this year. I have no doubt Miami has improved the roster from a pure talent standpoint, size and strength and abilities, and you've got to get these guys to fit together and play together. If you can accomplish that, I see no reason why this team can't be 2 or 3 wins better than last year.
Alex, one of my favorite things about Miami football is that fan culture of really going all out with game day costumes and outfits. What's the one that impresses you the most, that every time you see it, you're like, man, that guy did a great job?
Well, I'll tell you one based on the climate down here. And she's actually a friend of mine, but there's a Miami fan who goes by the moniker of Hoodie Girl. And when you're wearing a hoodie in September in Miami and it's like 100 degrees outside and 120 degrees with humidity, right there, I say job well done. If that's going to be part of your gimmick, then fantastic, because I'd rather be wearing something a little lighter than a hoodie this time of year. But that's commitment right there to being the top fan.
Alex Dono, our ACC and SEC team preview series today, previewing the Miami Hurricanes. Great stuff, Alex. So glad we got to catch up with you. All the best to a great season. We'll catch up with you during the 2023 campaign.
Yeah, and to your listeners out there who are Clemson fans, just tell Clemson to take it a little easy on Miami this year. They give Miami the business every time they play. Just take it a little easy on Miami.
Every single time. Thanks, Alex. Alex Dono, Locked on Canes podcast is where you can get his show.
And when we come back, we have some audio that I want you guys to try to guess what's happening in the audio. Most of the time, it's pretty apparent what's going on. But this audio is a world record-setting piece of audio. And I'll bet you that no one guesses what's happening in it. That's next here on Offsides. Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, we are the Fan Upstate. The number one thing you can do to help this show is subscribe to our podcasts on the Odyssey app, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts. If it gives you the option, click the auto download. That would be huge, huge if you would do that for us. Always trying to grow our numbers here, and you guys are the ones who make that happen. So, Mark, I don't know if this was recorded over the weekend. I don't know exactly when this was recorded, but I do know that it was recent. There's audio of a man setting a Guinness Book World Record. But you will never guess, based on the sound of this clip, what the man is doing. And I want everybody who's listening to text in 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. I want you to get into the YouTube comment section and try to tell me what this sound is. There's no way you're going to guess this. What does that sound?
Okay.
Anybody got any guesses?
Hey,
what does that sound?
It's a family show.
Yeah,
Eyes up here.
I know what it
Eyes
sounds like.
Diesel, can I guess?
Sure.
All right. What do you guys think that is? Diesel will give you a sexy wink if you get the right answer. Okay. Okay. The prizes here lately are a little bit short, but Diesel will give you a sexy wink if you get the right answer. I'm going to say, Diesel, he was trying to set the world record for hacking boards.
Hacking boards. No, that's not right.
That's not what he was doing.
That's not right. No. Brandon Keeler says it sounds like he's slapping spoons together. Also incorrect. P digits, tap dancing, incorrect. So I think we're going to have to hear this audio again. I'm going to give you one more chance to hear this audio and see if you can guess what this Guinness Book of World Record was set for. You can really hear him pushing and straining there at the end. He's like,
Okay, Diesel, this is when I get very disappointed in the offsiders. Because Buckeye, a texter says what he's doing is nut slaps. I don't even know if I can say. I don't know if I can say that on the radio.
It's not a speed bag, sir.
No.
This isn't like Rocky training with the speed bag.
This is a karate guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a karate guy. So why would we have people saying he was chopping broccoli? Why would people be saying he's jumping rope, table tennis?
Nope.
All right.
Nope. All of those way off.
He was getting shot with paintballs, and my personal favorite thus far, Diesel, clapping his butt cheeks. That's what he was doing.
Incorrect. However, the weird thing is, oddly, like you're kind of maybe a little bit warm, but the person who said nut slaps was sort of in the right direction.
No, I'm
sort of in the right direction. Again, this is a Guinness World Record piece of audio. I'm going to give it to you one more time, and then we're gonna try to see if we can get a correct answer from somebody, and we'll give you the answer and move on. So listen to this.
Okay, my man was struggling there for a minute.
He's straining.
My man is definitely straining.
He's straining.
When do we strain? We strain when we're on the
Crapper.
King's Court, right?
Crapper.
We strain when we're sitting on the crown. What is he doing? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, crushing cans, getting kicked in the nuts. The second thought was he was playing Hungry Hungry Hippos. It did sound a little bit like Hungry Hungry Hippos.
Incorrect.
It did sound like that. Let's see here. Texter says was getting slapped in the face. Was that right?
No.
Okay.
No.
Chopping
but it does
things,
involve his face.
Chopping things with his manhood.
Nope. So what's happening here, Mark? This audio is from an Indian martial artist. His name is Naveen Kumar, and he broke a world record, now appearing in the Guinness World Record book, by smashing 273 walnuts with his forehead. He had them lined up on a table and is going pop, 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 headbutt, 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 headbutt
Okay, wait. Now that I've
broke
heard that, I gotta hear that one.
273 walnuts
There's
with his
no
forehead.
way your head can go that fast as he was going. Let me hear this one more time. No way. No way. No way.
That is the sound of a man headbutting 273 walnuts, cracking them with his forehead.
Don't you think the Guinness Book of World Records has jumped the shark a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, how about records that actually matter, or actually, you know, like eating this number of watermelons counts, but smashing walnuts with your head? I mean, this just, you're searching for records at this point, right?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a whole industry of people that this is all they do, is they try to create fantastic ways to get into this Guinness World Record book.
I'll tell you, Diesel, a dark thing about me, and I don't know why I enjoy this so much. I absolutely love watching that slapping league.
By the way, you realize tomorrow is ESPN 8 The Ocho, right?
I didn't realize
it is
that.
tomorrow.
No,
August 8th.
Marble racing again?
August 8th, a full day of weird ass sports on ESPN.
You guys be safe out there, man. Literally in the last 10 minutes, during the time we've gone on, it's gone from like I'm going outside to exercise when the show's over to like this looks like Kansas and Dorothy, and you're not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah.
And massive.
Well, I put it in the
weather.
YouTube thread here that like we are in essentially a soundproof room, Mark, and we can only see out one side of the building.
Yeah.
So if the bad thing does not come at us from that direction, we're screwed and we don't know about it.
No,
I'm just thinking like one of these days, a tornado is going to hit us from the other side of the building. We won't even know that it's happening. Not even have a clue.
By the way, I love the slapping league, guys. You know, I have like a dark and morbid interest in that. The fact that you can knock a big, strong man unconscious with a slap. I laugh every time I watch that. I don't know why.
So, Mark, another thing that I wanted to get to here on the show today, this is audio that came from ESPN this morning from Mike Greenberg's show. He had on Heather Dinich, who is a longtime and very accomplished reporter in college football. And I've brought this up to you many times on the show. I said it, I think 2 weeks ago. I said 95% of Power 5 programs would struggle to go 6-6 if they were dropped down to a Group of 5 league. And I said nothing about the level of athletes that they currently have, because let's just say that happened. Let's just say for some reason Georgia was given the death penalty and they all of a sudden had to drop down to an FCS league or a Group of 5 league. Everyone would transfer out. They would have nobody on that roster. Not only that, they would lose 95% of their television revenue by being moved into the Sun Belt Conference. And finally, I have a little bit of proof from Heather Dinich, who was talking about the Pac-4 schools and what becomes of them. Do they go independent? Do they move into the Mountain West Conference? Do they get absorbed by the Mountain West and reskin it as the Pac whatever league? Who knows? But here's what Heather Dinich had to say about the universities and how they could deal with moving from a Power 5 to a Group of 5 league financially.
We're talking about an academic institution as prestigious as Stanford University that doesn't know where its home will be in 2024. They have endowment money that they could dip into to save their sports, but if they wind up in the Mountain West Conference, which I'm assuming that's where Washington State and Oregon State will land, Stanford and Cal are probably going to be begging the Big Ten to add them as well, but this is very detrimental if they have to join a conference that's not in the Power 4, because they're not going to be operating with $30 million of TV money. And so they would be forced to dip into endowment or cut sports. That's where it is right now.
That should scare the living hell out of anybody who's thinking their league might collapse. Because if suddenly you don't have 30, 40, $50 million a year coming in, you've got programs who know only one thing, operating with a $30 million handout from your conference every year. If you don't have that all of a sudden, a lot of them aren't going to have a clue what to do.
And Diesel, well, that comes under the backdrop, and I missed Diesel. I heard her say that Stanford and Cal would be begging the Big Ten.
Yeah.
We now and the Oregon State and Washington State. We're going to go where?
Mountain West. This
Mountain West.
was an assumption, as an assertion. She's just speculating here.
Okay, so we have contrary news to that. This coming out in the last hour from Pete Thamel. Pete Thamel, correct. Thank you. In the next 24 hours, there's 2 calls for the ACC to vet and have exploratory discussions on the potential addition of Cal and Stanford. One is for ACC athletic directors, and the other for the league's presidents and chancellors. I thought that the Pac-12, Pac-10, Pac-4, Pac-1 may have had a last stand, Diesel. It's becoming more obvious that they really are going to be extinct, that they really are going away. And I've seen some people say, well, this is going to be great for Clemson and Florida State because now the ACC can go back and get a new grant of rights deal, get a new media rights arrangement. How much do you think Cal and Stanford changed the current media rights agreement?
Stanford maybe a little bit, but Cal, no.
No, like I don't. You guys think you're going to get $10 million more a year?
And besides, I don't know if people realize this. Most Southerners don't have a very high opinion of Californians. You're not going to like the fan bases, and just based on principle, you're not going to like the fan bases, and you're not going to like having Stanford and Cal in your conference because you will look at them as culturally diametrically opposed to the Southeast.
So, as this form of consolidation goes throughout college football, it's going to be fascinating to see what ends up happening. It's very clear that the SEC is choice number 1, that the Big Ten is choice number 2, right? If you're all about money, the Big Ten might actually be your first choice. The Big 12 is where you go if you can't get into the SEC or the Big Ten. The ACC is fighting right now for survival because they know they're going to lose half their league once teams figure out how to get out of the grant of rights. Where is this headed, though? Is this headed toward a total consolidation with just the SEC and the Big Ten? We just have 2 massive conferences. At some point, it just becomes college football.
This is a great way for ESPN to spin off paying some schools money that they don't want to pay them. Schools that have been grandfathered in for decades who don't bring anything athletically or from a brand standpoint. Now that also means there's going to be a few like Vanderbilt who just keeps winning the lottery year in and year out, keeps cashing them checks, even though they haven't done a damn thing to earn it.
Up next on the show, there was, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but the Gamecocks and the South Carolina football program got a little bit of an embarrassing dose of medicine over the weekend. We will tackle that with Chris Phillips of the Spurs Up Show next here on Offsides. We are the Fan Upstate. So this morning, I got a text from Chris Phillips, the Spurs Up Show, and he goes, Mark, I'm surprised I haven't heard you weigh in. I'll read the text to you. Why? How about that? If Chris has an objection to this, he's here on the line with us right now. But this morning, Chris texted me and he says, I'm surprised I haven't heard your take on South Carolina's NIL embarrassment over the weekend. And so we had a CBS show Saturday. Sunday was a father bonus Sunday for Jackson and I, right? So I was a little bit out of the loop of what was going on, and I heard this all today, and it sounds like, Diesel, the bottom 10 percenters of Gamecock fans, we've talked about this quite a bit, were being extra bottom 10 percenters.
Oh.
Big surprise, right?
Good thing about weeds, Mark, is if you miss them, they always give you another chance to pluck them.
They do. They most
bottom 10
do.
percenters always find another way to show you that they're a bottom 10 percenter.
We've seen bottom 10 percenters come out about the U.S. women's national team. I'm not rooting against the red, white, and blue because they're against me politically. Get the hell out of here. Now we're seeing this. Let's bring in Chris Phillips right now. Okay, Chris, can you give our audience just the 411 on exactly what went down and why it kind of was an embarrassment for the university and for the football program?
Mark Diesel, first things first, appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, what a wild weekend it was. I think folks are just getting ready for the college football season to kick off by, losing their collective you-know-what on a Saturday afternoon, but that's what took place. And I think what it was, honestly, looking back, is sort of the fan base, the bottom 10 percenters, or whoever, hit a boiling point because of, even with the pickup of Dylan Stewart and recruiting, there have been some misses, what have you, that, if you're connected or talk to enough folks, maybe or definitely are NIL related. Either way, long story short, Saturday, South Carolina was the favorite to land a 4-star prospect, Jalewis Solomon. And in the 11th hour, Auburn came through. Let's just call it what it is, right? Let's speak freely. They came through with a bigger bag. That's it. They reallocated some funds. I know this based on the people I've talked to, reallocated some funds and directed that Jalewis Solomon's way, and he donned the Auburn cap when he announced his commitment at 4 o'clock. Then all hell broke loose. And when I say all hell broke loose, I mean social media was an absolute mess. You had fans calling out Jalewis Solomon, saying he's all about the bag, all about the money. You had, guys exposing DMs that they had exchanged with Jalewis Solomon, making a graphic for him, exposing him as, look at this guy wasting my time, wasting my energy. How dare he? Putting him on full blast. And then the final blow, and the most damning of all, was the tweet that came from the Garnett Trust. And Mark and Diesel, you know as well as I do, if you want to tweet something on your burner, if Joe Blow wants to say something, the common fan, what have you, you can. But when you're speaking as an entity, you have a greater responsibility, right? When you represent not just yourself, but something much greater than yourself. The official NIL collective of the University of South Carolina, they earned that title over the last week and a half or so. The Garnett Trust tweeted this: if money is the deciding factor for a player, chances are they aren't the kind of athlete who will appreciate the culture our coaches are building. Now, the pushback is this: what did they say wrong? And Mark, you may think they said nothing wrong. Diesel, you may agree with that as well. But you cannot say that when you are the collective at the University of South Carolina. Your number one job is to put together NIL packages that are lucrative enough to bring these kids to the University of South Carolina. You are complaining about the very thing that you were created to do. And it looks like sour grapes that you're upset that Auburn was able to put together a more enticing NIL package, and therefore he chose the Auburn Tigers. So it was a complete mess over the weekend, Mark. And I feel like, and I told you this morning, it feels like one of those off-season storylines, which when toe meets leather, we'll kind of forget about this and it'll be water under the bridge. And I'm sure Shane Beamer will be able to overcome it in recruiting, but just an absolute mess. We hear all the time, number one rule, right? Don't tweet at recruits. Don't tweet at recruits. Don't say anything negatively to them. Because, hey, guess what? They can still flip. They talk to other prospects. They're friends with the prospects. And a fair number of Gamecock Nation spent the last 48 plus hours literally subtweeting Jalewis Solomon, or tweeting at him, by the way. And the tweet from the Garnett Trust was really the one that I think sent most folks over the edge. And I'll tell you this, Mark, even the folks who maybe aren't very fond of you or I, even they were upset about it. It was just a bad look by South Carolina's official NIL collective.
Chris, we all believe that NIL will eventually have some sort of guardrails on it, some sort of protection, degrees of separation between universities and these trusts and the players themselves. The question has always been, what will it be what will it take to actually put guardrails on NIL? Was something like this, something this ugly, coming from a collective, riling up an entire fan base, inevitable? And do you believe that it getting nasty like this is going to happen more and more often and be the thing that actually is the catalyst for positive change, positive guardrails around NIL?
Well, I mean, I think, Diesel, you can learn from every single mistake, right? So I'd like to believe that positive change can come from something like this. And let me say this. At the end of the day, it was a tweet, right? It was a tweet. We've all sent a questionable tweet in our lives, and it happens. So I don't want to sit here and say that the person who sent that tweet, a lot of people said the person who sent that should be fired. The Garnett Trust should be disbanded. I'm not saying that, but it needs to be used as a learning experience, right? And it is something that I don't know that I'd go as far, Diesel, to say that it's inevitable, because it could have been stopped. You know what I mean? It could have not happened. I mean, you got to have the sense or the wherewithal to understand who you are, but more importantly, what you represent. I mean, again, if you want to switch to your burner account and say that and say, if you don't like NIL, you disagree with it, you disagree with a guy taking more money, so be it. But this is the nature of the game. Don't hate the player, hate the game. That's where we are. So you either embrace NIL and you do the absolute best you can to put together enticing packages to get players to your school, or you get left behind and you're recruiting like Vanderbilt. So you make the choice, you make the selection. And I don't like hypocrisy, Diesel, when it comes to these types of things. So South Carolina has gotten players to come to the Gamecocks because of NIL. So when they choose to go somewhere else, it's a double-edged sword, right? But you're being a hypocrite if you're saying that, NIL is this terrible thing and, we need to focus more on culture fit. You think Nicholas Harbor came to South Carolina because he loves the university and he loves being a Gamecock? That's one of the reasons. But NIL played a factor. You think it's not playing a factor with Dylan Stewart? I mean, Spencer Rattler's got a $140,000 G-Wagon. So South Carolina is doing just as well as anybody else in NIL, and I just don't understand, and maybe the person, whoever's running that, would ever have the wherewithal to understand that, we may miss on some. We just believe we're going to hit on more than we miss. And so with all that being said, Diesel, I think positive change can come from it. I understand we're all still learning. It's all still the Wild Wild West. But you've got to take emotion and personal feelings and your fandom and your bias, most importantly, out of it when you are running a collective, which is AKA, guys, nobody wants to say it, it's a business. And when you're running a business, there is no room for personal feelings.
Chris, do you hold optimism that, these meetings between Congress and college football leaders can result in some form of uniform legislation so that NIL is run the way that it was intended to, but which is basically, Chris, how I do an endorsement, right? We promote Mr. Sparky, your local electrician. We promote Smith & James. We promote Ingalls, right? They utilize me as an endorser for those. That's what NIL was supposed to be. Kid gets to campus. Kid develops relationships with local businesses. Local businesses use the kid to promote their products and services. That is benefiting on name, image, and likeness. It was never designed to be, and it's actually still illegal to use name, image, and likeness and payments and financials to get a kid to come to a school. Do you have any hopes that somebody can create legislation to where this is what it was designed to be?
I want to say yes, Mark, but I really don't know, because I just don't know how you stop it. I don't know how you put the genie back in the bottle, because you just made the point, Mark, and I heard this a lot, or saw this a lot on social media, and folks pointing out that, it's illegal to use NIL to, pitch a recruit, get them to come to your school. But we're not naive, right, Mark? I mean, we know, they're putting these NIL packages together, and that's one of the things they're pitching on the recruiting trail. All these coaches have talked about it. Players are coming into their office and saying,
okay, the facilities are nice. What's your scheme? Like, how are you going to use it? What's the NIL look like? Like, they want to know. I mean, it's part of the deal. So to insinuate that, well, it's something that, should not be used in recruiting, or that's actually illegal, we know that's a crock of what.
Well,
right?
yeah, but Chris, but again, whenever the NCAA steps back to doing their job, or whenever Congress steps up and says this is the legislation, you do have compliance officers at these schools. Okay, so you can't tell me you can't try to enforce what is right. Like I understand what is going on right now is not that, but is there a chance that it could be applied the way that it was intended? In other words, you don't lose out on Jalewis because NIL is no longer being used that way anymore.
Yeah, I think with Congress involved, I think there's reason to believe that we could start to get some sort of structure that maybe solves this, quote unquote problem. I don't know that Auburn would label it a problem today, but either way to solve this and just put some regulations in place. I mean, Mark, obviously I don't think anybody should lean on the NCAA for anything because they don't have a spine. So what good is the NCAA going to do? But I think taking it to Congress, thankfully there are people that are in those positions that are much smarter than you and I and kind of have an idea on how we can fix this thing. Because like I said, you look at it and I don't really know where you go. I mean, I don't know what the direction is they take, but there's got to be, like you mentioned, there's got to be something you can do to, eliminate or at least, lessen the tampering, lessen the, pitching it on the recruiting trail and making it more fair across the board. But, right now, man, it doesn't feel like we're really near that. And so it's still just kind of the wild, wild west at this point.
Chris Phillips, the Spurs Up Show every single day. They host the Daily Crow. Follow him on Twitter at the Spurs Up Show. Looking forward to joining you on Thursday, Chris. Thanks so much for the 411 on the kerfuffle that went down among the Angry Birds over the weekend. Thanks, man.
Yeah, Mark Diesel, I'm looking forward to talking football here very, very soon. Appreciate you guys.
Yes, definitely. Chris Phillips of the Spurs Up Show. We'll be back with a top 5 at 5 right after this here on Offsides. What's good, my friends? Hope you're staying safe out there. Suddenly, like, man, we changed our state into Oklahoma.
That's apocalyptic
or like
out there.
Kansas, man. It like out of nowhere. Fire and brimstone. Cats and dogs living together. Mass hysteria. You name it. What movie is that?
Ghostbusters.
Yeah, we were watching that last night.
Love that movie.
Fantastic. Favorite thing to do with Jackson Diesel, 6 years old, show him our favorite 80s movies.
Yeah.
Guess what's on tap tonight? The Goonies.
Nice.
The Goonies. And he loves them.
Nice.
Karate Kid 1, Karate Kid 2, Ghostbusters. I think he's a little young for Ferris Bueller, but that is our plan. Fantastic to be here with you guys, rolling on until 7 p.m. today. And of course, my friends, it is time for us to get to that jam. We call it the Top 5 at 5, the top 5 biggest sports stories of the day, the top 5 topics we're discussing. Ladies and gentlemen of the Upstate, Offsiders, the Top 5 at 5 starts right now.
And now, the Top 5 at 5.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hit it.
5.
So the ACC is in discussions. They're going to be having conference calls tonight and into tomorrow about whether they want to extend bids to Cal and Stanford. Oh, man. Like, you know, if you're an ACC fan, does that do something for you? You know, and I know what you're thinking. Well, Mark, what matters is what it does for Clemson. Yeah, if I am the media rights entity, if I am ESPN or CBS or Fox streaming services, Cal and Stanford do not move my needle. Now, they're known for a great play when a player of my instrument, the trombone, got bowled over on one of the most insane lateral plays you've ever seen in college football, and the band is out on the field. But that is a West Coast team. That is not an ACC team, and I just fail to see how this excites you. Is it interesting? Yeah, it's interesting, because we did wonder what was going to become of the remaining 4 teams in the Pac-12, right? We heard Heather Dinich say that she expects Oregon State and Washington State to try to get in to the Mountain West when all is said and done. The Pac-12 is donezo. The ACC is trying to survive this mess. Do you guys believe that Cal and Stanford gives the ACC a better media rights deal? Maybe marginally, but are Clemson and Florida State going to stay on for $3 million more a year when they're actually $30 or $40 million a year behind the Big Ten and the SEC? I don't know. I'm not really feeling it. Next up,
4.
the Atlanta Braves surprisingly dropped a 2 of 3 to the Chicago Cubs over the weekend. The problem was Elder and Morton did not get their starting duties done, gave up 14 runs in the final 2 games combined after winning the first game of the series 8-0. Now beginning a 4-game set for Pittsburgh. And folks, after going through MLB the last, studying history the last 5 or 10 years, it is almost always August when the teams that are going to make a run click. It almost always happens in the month of August, right? This is an important time. July and August have not been the Braves' best months thus far. The Braves had a 4-game losing streak from July 15th through July 19th, and now dropped 2 out of 3 to the lowly Chicago Cubs. Can they get right amidst this, let's see here, 11-game road trip? Can they go home with a winning record in this stretch? They got mediocre Chicago, below mediocre Pittsburgh, and mediocre New York on this stretch. It would be nice to see them drop a 7-4 or better. To go 7-4 the rest of the way, they'd have to go 6-2. We'll see. Can they make it happen? Tonight, it is former Clemson Tiger Spencer Strider towing the bump. Next up,
3.
At number 3 here today, we've asked you guys the question in the face of all of this college football realignment, what change would potentially get you to walk away from college football? For me, it's if it ever felt like the NFL. And again, I don't know that I would ever turn it off completely. I mean, folks, this is what I do for a living, right? It's probably not smart for me to saying they're ruining college football when I'm in a market where this is my bread and butter. 70% of this show is college football, right? But I have to be honest with you. I think they're ruining the sport right now. I think 30 or 40 years from now, somebody's going to go in and try to undo all of the things that they did right now. And that'll be an attempt to save the sports of college football. But to me, folks, if it ever felt like the NFL, you know, where regionality didn't matter anymore and you couldn't argue on behalf of your conference anymore, and it just felt like a coast-to-coast thing, I don't know. You know, like if we're losing a lot in terms of our scheduling, we're losing a lot in terms of what we loved about the sport.
These leagues are getting so big, Mark, where your records, or excuse me, your schedules are going to be essentially randomized every year, where you won't know from one year to the next who is on your schedule. So you had a tough game against Ohio State this year. If you're Michigan, guess what? You might not play Ohio State again for another 3 years. And then what fun is that? And then you've got fans who spend their 4, 5, in my case, 6 in your case, years in college, and they've only seen Ohio State on their home field once. And to them, that rivalry now means a heck of a lot less than it used to.
Diesel, don't shortchange me. It was 7.5 years.
Ah, okay.
At the
Excuse
University
me.
of Florida. 7.5 years.
You know, a lot of
Please
people
don't
go for 7.5 years. They're called doctors.
I'm a doctor of dumbassery, Diesel. Don't shortchange my degree. Yeah, folks, look, when it comes to college football, I like consistency. College football is giving me a paint by numbers. I like geography. College football is playing pin the tail on the donkey blind. I like tradition. And college football is taking a blank canvas to the sport after 100 years. The NFL has been proactive in making change. Major League Baseball has been reactive in making change. College football has been explosive and destructive in making change. So what change would get you to walk away from the sport? Is there one? I don't see myself ever walking away completely. However, it could be a little bit less must-see.
Well, the good news is
feel the way that it did.
You don't have to walk away from the sport entirely. You could just walk towards a league, conference, or a division that does things the right way, where geography still matters, where in-state rivalries still get played at the end of the season every year. I'm here to tell you, if you're pissed off as an Oregon fan, if you're pissed off as a Clemson fan, if Clemson goes to the Big Ten, you don't have to walk away from the sport entirely. You just shift your fandom to a division that actually still values what made college football special in the first place.
The regular season, regionality, every week matters. You have that commonality between your generation and previous generations because you all played Kentucky and South Carolina and Vanderbilt and Tennessee and Georgia. You know, what was it like in your games with those 5 teams? That matters, man. That matters, and you're doing away with it. Those that are proponents of this, I was hearing Colin Cowherd say, we're going to have more good games now. Give me more good games. Yeah, but that have no regional value whatsoever. 0 regional value. I hate it. You know, Oregon, Ohio State's supposed to be a non-conference game, or it's supposed to be a bowl game, you know, and we haven't even mentioned yet the student athletes who, you know, the number one factor in mental health, right, is getting rest. And you're asking them to travel even more. Here is Eli Drinkwitz, a little bit longer of a clip here, but here's Eli Drinkwitz commenting on the ignoring of the student athletes themselves with all this realignment.
I thought the transfer window, I thought the portal was closed. That's just for the student athletes. The adults in the room get to do whatever they want, apparently. And it's, it's just sad that there's, my question is, did we count the cost? I'm not talking about a financial cost. I'm talking about, did we count the cost for the student athletes involved in this decision? What cost is it to those student athletes? We're talking about a football decision. They based off football, but what about softball and baseball who have to travel cross country? Do we ask about the cost to them? Do we know what the number one indicator of symptom of or cause of mental health is? It's lack of rest and sleep. Traveling in those baseball, softball games, those people, they travel commercial. They get done playing at 4. They got to go to the airport. They come back. It's 3 or 4 in the morning. They got to go to class. I mean, did we ask any of them? Are we going to look back? I don't worry at all about the game. The game is going to be strong. Football is going to be fine. We'll all figure it out. But did we consider the people that we are entrusted with? Did we consider the student athlete? Because then we're asking them to go out on their own to get NIL. We didn't say we're going to revenue share. We're not saying they're getting a piece of it. So that's the thing that's bothering me right now in this whole situation is we keep trying to limit what the student athlete can do, but then we act on our own. And everybody's got their own reasons. And I'm not questioning any of those. I'm saying as a collective group, have we asked ourselves, what's it going to cost the student athletes? I saw on Twitter several student athletes talking about one of the reasons they chose their school was so that their parents didn't have to travel. They chose a local school so that they could be regionally associated so their parents could watch them play and not have to travel. Did we ask them if they wanted to travel from the East Coast to the West Coast?
Yeah, of course not. Of course not, because they don't care about you. They care about their money. Folks, when you were growing up and what made you love college football, maybe you weren't able to put it in these words, but you loved it because it wasn't about money. It was about something that money couldn't buy. MasterCard had the commercial, right? These tickets cost $300. Plane tickets, hotels, $600. Beating your arch rival, priceless. There are some things money can't buy. That's why you loved college football, because it wasn't about money. And I think it loses so much about what made it unique and special with these rules and with these changes. And it is such a shame that we are having to go through this right now. I'm not about just better games. I'm about the feel of college football. And that is what's being threatened majorly right here. Next up.
2.
On the rundown here on the top 5 at 5, this number is called Gamecock Embarrassment. Oh, big surprise. Mark Ryan is going to slam the Gamecocks again. Those are the words shared with me by Chris Phillips of the Spurs Up Show. He said, Mark, I haven't seen you comment on the Gamecock embarrassment yet this weekend. So here's what went down. The Gamecocks thought they were in the driver's seat for 4-star Jalewis Solomon. All right, Jalewis was having people make him graphics to go to South Carolina. It's where he wanted to go, right? They were considered a shoo-in. Then in the 11th hour, he chooses the hat of Auburn. These signing day, these announcements, oral commitments, verbal commitments have become so much more interesting because you don't know who's throwing around what amount of money at the last minute. So he chooses Auburn over South Carolina. Then the official collective of South Carolina football tweets out, well, if this kid's about money, he probably wouldn't be a great fit for South Carolina anyway. No, that's your job. You are the collective of South Carolina. You didn't come in with the bag that Auburn did. Imagine folks throwing money into a collective, which is, in my opinion, throwing money away because you're trying to buy your team being competitive, right? Imagine throwing money into a collective and then your school misses out on a guy you wanted. Why did I throw $2,000 into this collective again?
You know what that is, Mark? That's called gambling. That is called gambling, putting money into something unsure of whether or not you're going to get a return. And that is gambling, which is why it shocks me that since sports gambling is illegal in South Carolina, Governor Henry McMaster hadn't done anything to stop this and say, no, we don't allow legal gambling in the state of South Carolina. We're not going to allow this because it is tantamount to gambling.
Yeah, Diesel, it's actually gambling even if Jalewis Solomon chooses South Carolina, because how do you know he's going to be any good? How do you know this guy can produce? How do you know he can play? So anyway, the embarrassment continued for the Gamecocks because the bottom 10% of that fan base then went after the kid himself, right, which is something only losers do. no one should ever do that, right? 90% of the Gamecock fan base are good people. But the bottom 10% has this uncanny ability to giving a bad name to anyone affiliated with the program. And if I was Shane Beamer, I would be filing away all of those Twitter handles and banning all those people from ever attending games in Williams-Brice Stadium. They hurt the program with their behavior. The kid can do whatever he wants. You know, a lot of those people yelling at the kid, right? Let's say South Carolina offered him $50,000 and Auburn offered him $100,000. Would you leave a job for a $50,000 promotion? If they're giving you a promotion of 100% of your salary, would you leave your job for another job? That's what Jalewis Solomon did. Lay off him. And finally,
1.
The U.S. women's national team eliminated from the World Cup, their worst World Cup performance ever. It's hard not to feel like I did in 2016 when the men missed the World Cup, that women's soccer in this country, as a result of this, takes a significant step back. Their worst ever performance in the World Cup was third place before now. Third place. This year, they're eliminated in the round of 16. And believe you me, we got what we deserved. Not because of politics, but because of play. The number 1 ranked team in the world, the Americans, played 4 games and won 1. The Americans lost because in 3 games against Europe, the Netherlands, Portugal, and Sweden, they scored a grand total of 1 goal in 3 games. All right? So what I choose to do is to lament, why was Megan Rapinoe in the game? She wasn't playing well. How did we forget how to score the ball? You know, we got what we deserved. We could have advanced. We were 1 penalty kick away from advancing, and we couldn't make it. We got what we deserved. But I'll tell you, people are going in far different directions than that.
Well, you know, Mark, if we have Megan Rapinoe on the team, but don't put Megan Rapinoe in the biggest situations, she'll claim discrimination. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people on the internet will scream discrimination. And now U.S. Women's National Soccer has to deal with, why does U.S. Women's National Soccer hate gay people? That's where this goes. We just saw people in our own state who threw money at a kid get mad because that kid chose somebody else because they gave him more money. None of this internet BS has to make any sense, Mark. But that's where people will take it. Oh, you didn't put in the pink-haired lady because you hate gay people. What? No, we didn't put her in the game because she's not that good anymore.
Yeah, she's not good.
She's gotten older. She was good a couple of years ago. But every player ages out. Every player gets too old for their sport. It's an inevitability.
She played so poorly. And look, I'm not one of these people that hates on Megan Rapinoe or hates on American soccer players. But folks, the bigger issue is that I have, right, is those folks who were so un-American that they were actually rooting against our national team because they perceive that a few players on the team do not share their political views. Never allow your patriotism to be dictated by politics. Never. If you are waiting to find a team that shares your political views, you're going to be lonely for a very, very, very long time. And look, if you want to avoid watching your favorite team play in college or the NFL because they're against your politics, that's your prerogative. But to cheer against our national team is to cheer against our country. And you're actually doing the same thing you're accusing them of.
Mark, it's the same people who get upset that not enough of the women's team players on the field sang the national anthem. Those people getting upset about that are the same people who say, oh, no, it's okay that the Saudis are buying golf because Donald Trump let them play around at their course.
Sounds like a lot of un-American views to me.
It's literally the same people. You don't get to choose when you want to be patriotic and when you don't want to be patriotic.
Yeah, guys.
You either are or you aren't.
Right. So you believe that because of political differences, the women's national team is un-American. So you're going to do the most un-American thing and root against them. You're going to be a traitor, essentially, right?
It's like rooting for the Hawks in Mighty Ducks 1.
You're going to judge the American team based on whether they're actually mouthing the words for the national anthem or not. Nobody kneeled. Okay, nobody kneeled. Most of them had their hands on their heart. Some of them sang, some of them did not. That's their freedom of expression. They can do what they want to do, right? And realize, folks, that as you are wanting to paint the entire team with that broad brush, it's only one or two players on the team that you have an issue with. But methinks the real issue is that, like, some of the extreme conservative types out there don't think women should have that voice, right? Your NFL teams kneeled for the national anthem. You punished them for 1 year with lower ratings. The women's national team kneeled a few years ago for the anthem. Some of you still haven't come back. Is it about their beliefs, or are you feeling like they shouldn't be able to do this as women? Women should not display the way that they are. I don't know. We highlight this kind of thing on Offsides. And I challenge you to challenge your own beliefs. Because if you're going to disown an American team because of politics, that is the most small-minded, myopic mindset ever. It's un-American, and frankly, it's dumb. And those are today's top 5 at 5. Now it's your chance to chime in, which you can do at 844-FAN-PHONE. That's 844-326-3663. The text line is there for you at 71307. Just start your text with the word fan, and away you go. You can get to us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. We'd love to have you at the Fan Upstate on all three. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to us on YouTube. And finally, email. You guys can all email the show. Mark Ryan, that's M-A-R-C Ryan, at thefanupstate.com. All the different ways you can get in touch with us here on the most interactive sports radio show anywhere. Let's get to just a couple of texts before we're out for the break. Mark, what are your thoughts about the brawl between the White Sox and Guardians? Tim Anderson got cold-cocked, man. That was insane. Insane. Love seeing that. Let's see here. Conferences, a texter says, are going to have to rebrand if they continue adding non-regional opponents. The ACC no longer makes sense with Cal and Stanford. I agree. Texter says, my God, this weather has people on 85 forgetting how a car works. Truffle, shuffle, and hey, you guys. Texter says, as a Braves fan, we were spoiled in June, only losing 3 to 5 games. We got to know that's not doable all year. We're still in the running for postseason. Chop on. You've essentially clinched the postseason berth. Fangraph says the Braves are 100% to make the playoffs. Texter says, Mark, let's be real. No chance in 40 years football is falling at the rate it's always grown, and someone has to save it. Think about what you just said. No, I know. I think football is going to need saving. They've lost their way, right? Let's see. Texter says schedules are made sometimes 3 to 5 years in advance when it comes to college football. There are going to be some games they just cannot give up because of contractual obligation. The schedule cannot be too randomized because we're always going to try to put Alabama in the playoff, Clemson in the playoff, and Notre Dame in the playoffs because they have the fans that spend that type of money. See how many people feel like everything in our lives is just corrupt right now? Like our trust in our leaders has never been lower. Texter says, as a Gamecock fan, best wishes to him if he got more money. Beamer hopefully expressed the NIL has nothing to do with him. Texter says, let's see here. Couldn't agree anymore with your last take on number 1. Thank you very much, Texter. I appreciate that. Look, we bring it strong. We do not shy away from our opinions here, nor does our next guest. Folks, on Saturday, I had a chance. If you had the best guest ever for college football realignment, who would it be? It would be the Adam Schefter of college football, right? That's Brett McMurphy. Well, we got him, and you're going to hear him next, right here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate.
Unfiltered, uncensored, and unapologetic sports talk. This is Offsides with Mark Ryan on the Fan Upstate.
Diesel, could you do me a solid?
Hang on. Whoa. Hang on. Headset's on. Can't hear you. What?
Could you possibly push the read until the final segment of the hour?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can do that. And bye, guys, on the stream, by the way.
Oh.
We were still live.
Oh, sorry about that.
We're still live on the stream.
Hey, everybody. How you doing? Good to see you guys. I forget about this sometimes because we did the show so long without this. Alex Rowe, not me, Madcraft, Stephen Webb. Appreciate all the commentary today, guys. Alex Rowe says, I see new rivalries. Bowl season has sucked for years. Now it will be playoff season. You think playoff season is going to be ruined by this, Alex? Not me says, people who are in charge of this probably don't care about the sport nearly as much as the fans. Great point. Sure feels that way, right? Madcraft says, it's like taking all the teams that didn't make the playoffs in the NFL and have them continue to play for no reason during the playoffs. Stephen Webb says Rapinoe had no business playing. She wasn't even getting minutes with her club team. You know, I understood giving Rapinoe some minutes to see if she could rework her magic, but when it was obvious that she was the worst player on the pitch, you don't put her in crunch time. Then he brought her in late to make a penalty kick. She missed the penalty kick. She was only brought in to make the penalty kick. Subbed in like right at the end of the game. What a disaster for U.S. soccer, man. What an absolute disaster. You know who isn't a disaster? You guys. We love you so much, man. Thank you guys so much. We will see you tomorrow.
See you guys.